So this is week 2, effectively, of undertaking the podcast series within the Impact Collective. And this week, we've brought in Jen McDonald from the Whanganui Learning Centre to have a bit of a conversation and catch up with us. Part of what we're doing here at the moment is looking through the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So this week is around quality education. And some of the things that people across our rohe are doing in that space. And you and I have met before in terms of the awesome mahi that you're doing, in particular with the more alt-ed stuff, the more non-traditional. So you thought it would be timely to not only catch up with you again and be able to sit across the table with you, but also get a bit of an understanding of the mahi that you're doing. So I'll throw the hospital pass over to you and just get you to introduce yourself and how you got to where you are with the Whanganui Learning Centre.
Wonderful. Kia ora, Steve. Kia ora. So, yeah, I'm Jen McDonald. So I'm the manager at the Whanganui Learning Centre. And the Learning Centre has been going strong in this rohe for 45 years now.
Wow. So
we're delivering a range of educational activities. We're careful not to call them programs.
Yep.
Activities really, and it's in response to what the community needs. So they're community-based education, and we listen really carefully to what OneO are saying as they come through the door, and what it is that they need to really to thrive in their lives.
So the premise is still located down in Wicksteed Street?
We are 232 Wicksteed Street.
Cool.
So we've got a beautiful big old building there that was previously the YWCA, and it offers some fantastic spaces for people to learn in, depending on what their need is. So some people like being in the big groups, others really prefer a quieter space, and that lends itself really well to that.
So in terms of the delivery of some of the not programs, what are some of the things that you guys are supporting and enabling throughout our communities?
Yeah, so we're adult education, and we have a kaupapa, very strong kaupapa of whole of WaNo. So if one person comes in the door, we recognise they're not an island, and we'll involve the whole family where we can. So although we do lots of education around intensive numeracy and literacy and those types of things, we also focus quite strongly on those everyday learning opportunities. So when we first met, we were doing the bubble kōrero.
Yes.
So we have about 300 families a year that come through our door, 300 to 400. And we recognised after the first lockdown that there was a lot of fear in the community. And so we had WaNo coming in to learn, but that learning was interrupted by the fear that they were feeling from lockdown. And so as we were talking to them, we realised a lot of them just wanted to express what that was all about, what lockdown was like for them specifically. And they didn't really have a platform or anywhere to share that, just everyday people. So we decided we would do the bubble kōrero, which gave them a space to just share how they were feeling. And as with any of us, we all do that in very different ways. So we wanted them to have free range to tell their version of their story, or to tell their story. So we arranged that they could do it in any medium that they wanted to. So with that, it was everything from a simple kōrero to poems, songs, art pieces, the whole works.
Yeah.
Just absolutely beautiful. And we also, one of the other things that we put around it was that they didn't have to put their name to it. It could be completely anonymous, so that they could have true freedom of speech.
Yes.
We were just really at that stage entering into a time where things were getting a little bit political about some, not being happy about the whole lockdown, and others that were just had this sense of fear or sorrow. There was a lot of grief came through too, and what they told us. So that's how we did it. We ended up with over 1,000 people that contributed to that.
Yeah.
And from there we had an art exhibition and put it right out to the public so anybody could see it.
Some of the, I mean, I was privileged enough to be able to come and have a look at some of the pieces of work that the community contributed to that, and was even fortunate enough to have that as part of our lived experience COVID-19 reporting. But it ties in so closely with our overall wellbeing as a community.
Absolutely.
And being able to flow through with not only different forms of expression, because the way that we as individuals go along and have that innate ability to express it, whether it be through songs, through writing things down, through creativity in terms of, I can remember the placarded head with stickers all over it. So there was a range of different mediums that were used, and it was so powerful. How have you found the journey since then, realistically, in terms of, have you found that the overall well-being of the people that you're seeing is still being impacted by some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that the ones that were able to participate in Bubble Kōrero, it gave them another strategy for coping. And we've certainly seen that in this recent lockdown, those ones that have been with us for that period of time knew that they could come in and talk, and they knew that they didn't have to rush back to the learning that they were doing. If they were learning computers or whatever it was, they didn't have to rush back to that. There was space that we could hold for them while they just got themselves back in sync, really. So I do think it's a really important place in the community for people, whatever field you're in, to be able to hold that space for the people you're working with. And that's really what we were about. Just recognising that, some people were at home by themselves, they had no one to share it with. And now they know that actually this is a place that they can come and share that experience. So definitely those ones that have gone right through, we've seen that well-being nurtured. Some that have come in this more recent lockdown, we noticed a lot of fear in the community, so they took a while to come back through our doors, and they took a little while to re-engage in what they were doing. And definitely I would say heightened, the stress levels were heightened. So although we haven't done another
Bubble Kōrero.
Another exhibition or anything like that, they knew that we would still hold that space for them. We've done it in a slightly different way, just connecting.
So, I mean, the focus on wellbeing that you guys have, you've mentioned that it's about a person and their OneO as opposed to just that person. What we're trying to start delving into with the Impact Collective Mahi at the moment is taking a wider systems perspective, whether that be at a global scale or down to a OneO order and OneO centric model. What I've always appreciated about the work is that not one size has fit everybody. And the beauty of what you're doing down at the Whanganui Learning Centre is you've been able to take that and go, what works for you? What works for you and your family? Because traditional means may not have worked. So what's been your experience in working? I mean, the Whanganui Learning Centre has been open for a long time now.
It has.
But what's been your experience in your journey walking alongside these people who... square peg round hole kind of comes to mind.
Absolutely.
In terms of how you can best support them.
So like any not-for-profit organisation, we quite often have some restrictions because of our funding and the funding models that we follow. We've tried really hard to turn that on its head, and we just keep saying that at the centre of everything we do is OneO voice. That's why we're there. That's what drives us. That's what gets us up in the morning. And so turning it into that perspective allows us to adapt to what they need. So we're constantly readjusting the sails. we might have a series of things that we know we can do with people, but actually we have to hear what it is they need before we choose what we're doing.
Yep.
And we find that in doing that, you're honouring the person. You're it's a model of respect and value of the person, not just ticking a box, an education box, but really honouring what they need. So one of the things that's come out of that fairly recently is working with OneO, whose children are falling through the school system. And we recognised that we would have parents come in that just happened to mention their son was at home or daughter was at home, no longer attending school, and nothing much was happening with them. So in response to that, we've started doing some work in that space as well. So it's a matter of pulling it all together so that we can honour that family model, and get them re-engaged, whatever it takes. It might be that we're helping them to prepare a letter for the board, or it might be that we're going with them to education providers or wherever they need to go, to their social service meetings, all those things. So I always refer to it as everyday education, because they are learning how to engage with different systems, how to really thrive in their community, and that's an essential part of wellbeing.
Well, I mean, to me it sounds like you've taken the whole education box and you've blasted it wide open, because what you're providing here is more social elements as well. I mean, you're a support function for these kids and their families. You just mentioned there that you go along and you talk with them at boards. I'm presuming from previous conversations that that reference is more to like potential expulsions and suspensions and that kind of stuff with these students who again aren't fitting in a traditional setting. And there could be any range of things, which goes back to what you were saying around what's happening within that whānau. That could be potentially coming through and having an effect on that individual and their behaviours potentially. Wow, it's a lot.
It is a lot. And that's probably why we refer to the people that come through our door as our whānau. And that's the holistic approach that we take. What would we do if this was our brother, our sister, our child? And we just work really hard to honour that. So it can be very diverse, and we certainly never proclaim to knowing everything. We will often do have a conversation where we're saying, well, we're not sure what we might do here, but let's work this out together. Let's walk through the doors together. We also try very hard not to be their voice, but to promote their voice, but not speak for them. So there's a lot of learning that goes on in that space for the whānau.
How do you go about challenging some of those traditional power imbalances there? Because obviously that's going to be a biggie. Empowering a person which has had historical discrimination through a wide variety of reasons is going to internalise that disempowerment. So as part of what you're doing when you're supporting them is not only in a physical presence but actually empowering them to find their voice.
Absolutely. But it is very much about walking alongside. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. So we don't take the lead in it. We just encourage them to have a voice. And if I'm in a meeting with them, like if they've asked us to actually go to a meeting and we're playing that advocacy role, again, we very much take a back seat. They are prepared for the meeting, and we might just give them a few pointers every now and then, ask them a question that gets them talking again. But it's not just schools. It can be anything. It can be meeting their health professional. It could be going down to the WINS office. It can be looking for housing, all those sorts of things. So it's very, very broad what we're doing.
So what are the kind of age range that you deal with, like as an individual coming in, as opposed to the wider whānau? Because obviously those ranges, age ranges are going to spread, but. So
because of our funding, we're a little bit restricted to people who are adults, 16 or over and not enrolled in an education facility, another education facility.
Yep.
So age range, that can go from 16 up to, I think the oldest one we've had is probably about 87.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And everything in between.
Definitely getting up there. Yep.
So for some of those older ones that come through our door, they might be struggling with technology.
Yeah.
It might be that everything's gone online and they don't have a computer.
Yeah.
Or that a well-meaning family member has brought them a smartphone and they don't know how to turn it on.
Yep.
So when I say education, it's really broad.
Yeah.
Really broad. Yeah.
So what are some of those things? So you've got technology and encouraging them. Is there anything that you, just thinking about that more, that OneO-centric model, is there some stuff that you just go, hey, look, we can't provide that support for that particular type of education or training and...
Yep.
Yeah? Mm.
So we haven't said no to anyone yet.
Okay.
However, we work really strongly with other community partners.
Awesome.
So the list is longer than my arm.
Yeah.
We link to every other community organisation in the rohe.
Yeah.
And so if we're unable to provide immediate assistance for them, we'll walk with them to refer them to somewhere else. We never do that as a referral where we just fill in a form and off they go. We do the handover with them.
Yeah.
And often in that situation we'll also become the lead connector, if you like. So they often come back to us and we just keep connecting them wherever they need to be. So we would never proclaim to being able to do it all, but we are a bit of a one-stop shop.
So we've added social support network, we've added navigator, and we've added educators. Is there anything that the Whanganui Learning Centre doesn't do?
I guess education is always at the core of it, but it's how you define education. So we just see that as every day thriving in your community, and what does that look like? What does a person need to do that? We also have a community garden there, and we've just recently linked with the Kai Hub, because again, recognising that many of the families that came through, that was an issue for them. Food was an issue. Housing is an issue. So in response to that, we dug up a bit of land.
So that's located on site at Wicksteed Street behind it, isn't it? I remember seeing that last time that I was there. That must middle of springtime. It must be starting to get away.
Rockets away. So we do rely on some volunteers to come and help us with that as well. I guess the main thing, if I even look back over the last 2 weeks to give you an idea of, how vast it is, the work is that we're doing. We've helped with housing, we've helped with some drug and alcohol referrals, we've looked at food parcels for people, we've connected people for their benefits and checked out what they should be getting and what they weren't getting, and then we've done technology assistant, health and wellbeing classes, confidence classes, budgeting. There's a whole array of things, and we're a pretty small team. There's only 6 part-time staff members here, so we do it all.
Wow. What is the width and breadth of your rohe? Is it just Whanganui City, or is it wider than that? No,
it really is Whanganui City. Although I say that with, so we do have a number of families that come from up the Whanganui River. So anybody that links into Whanganui, if this is their main centre for shopping or schooling or whatever, then they can come to us. So we pick learners up to come into the centre as well, and any given day we're over every area of Whanganui transporting people.
Fantastic. In terms of some of the strengths that are coming through from Whanganui, We've had the conversations around this table quite robustly from time to time around what does wellbeing and equity mean. What you're demonstrating through the mahi that you're doing is focused on both of those. It's providing an equitable difference in the lives, which only goes to increasing people and whānau's wellbeing. What are some of the strengths that you're starting to see from the community, from iwi, from organisations that are supporting and leading in this space?
The Whanganui community is incredibly resilient, and often the whānau that come through our door, they've had this stamp of rejection put on them for many years, and they've been disengaged from all sorts of things. But we've found that if we just simply take the time to be with them and to listen, they have everything they need within themselves to thrive. They just need somebody to get alongside and nurture that, nurture and grow it. So I'd say that about individuals, families, communities, definitely resilience, but sometimes it just needs to be nurtured. And as far as other community organisations go, this is an incredible community for having organisations that are prepared to stand up for those people that are struggling or are having some difficulties in life. We've got a tremendous network of people that are willing to say, what needs to be done, and roll up their sleeves and get on with it.
Well, it sounds like you've got a community of organisations and individuals that are going to step outside of their own mahi as well. Absolutely. And go what needs to be done in terms of rather than traditional outputs, but focusing more on the outcomes of the individuals and those whānaus. That's super cool. What, on the flip side of that, however, what are some of the opportunities that are in this space? That as a community, if you had your lovely magic wand and you could change some of the aspects that are happening in this area in particular, what are some of those supports that could and should be implemented?
I think the one that is really standing out to us at the moment are these rangatahi that are actually falling through the gaps in education. Because we know that further down the line, that has such a big impact on their futures. So we're actually looking at some research around that at the moment to see how big the problem is in this area. But we're also acutely aware that it's a nationwide problem. So what can we do in this space that can then go out to New Zealand as maybe a way of working. We're not quite sure what that looks like yet, but that's something that has come up daily for us, especially since lockdown. Maybe it's got a bit worse since then. I don't know, but it's a big problem. Is it
a disaffection? Or disengagement?
You could put all sorts of names to it. I think one of the difficulties is that we all know that schools are under-resourced, and so if we have a young person who's falling out of that system, becoming disengaged, once they're actually stood down from school, often there's a big gap before anybody picks them up, if anybody picks them up. And so we're looking at that space at the moment, and how can we do that, because we see that as a really important part of growing a community. If you can support the young ones who have become disengaged and you can get them linked back into education or back into a thriving community, you're going to have fantastic outputs further down the track. So that's where we're focusing some of our mahi at the moment.
So is that taking into the consideration the more intergenerational nature of the work that you're finding? I mean, obviously you're experiencing it at the later stages. You've had an 87-year-old engage with you through the more formative years in the rangatahi space, as well as what's happening with your adult education. Is what you're seeing and the work that you're looking at in terms of the rangatahi space, because you've seen what those ongoing, more lifetime effects really are on some of these people? Yeah,
absolutely. That's part of it. I think the the other thing that we're very in a very privileged position is because we've worked with some of these families who have had difficulty at school themselves, and they've come to us as adults. When their children start to have difficulty, we're the place they come to, because we've built that relationship and trust.
Yep.
And so we're seeing that time and time again as families will come in and they'll just say, I didn't know where else to go. And actually when we've drilled down a little bit deeper, there has been nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So we might hold that space for rangatahi until they're back into school, or we might hold it until their te kura enrolment comes through, which can take up to 9 months sometimes. Wow. And that's a long time for someone to be sitting on the couch.
Correct, yeah.
So, yeah, it's really important work, and I think the reason we got into it is because of the relationship we had with adult learners coming in, and we were the one-stop shop for them to come to. So
fantastic. I mean, that's, as I say, what probably the mahi of the Whanganui Learning Centre was initially set up for seems to have just changed drastically as that environment's changed. As I mentioned, we've got the social elements, we've got the education elements, we've got the wellbeing elements, we've got the family elements. It's all there, but it is all set up to address equity or inequities. And it's there to be addressing the wellbeing of your communities, as you say, the thriving communities. So it's fantastic that there is an organisation out there that is filling a void, and actually, in real terms, you'd know that society in general, in terms of its equity and wellbeing, was increasing if you didn't have a job.
Yep, that's right. So, we're still working on that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think that's something as members of our own community, as member of iwi within this rohe, as member of organisations that we need to pay attention to and go, well, what's actually happening for these individuals, and how can we best support them and manaki them through that. And the work that you're doing is definitely helping in that area, so that's fantastic.
When you were just talking about the different aspects, what you're describing is a person.
Absolutely.
It is just a person.
Yeah.
And what we see time and time again is that often the different aspects that make up a person's life are siloed.
Yep.
One organisation does this and that's all they do, or they will do a short-term fix.
Yep.
It might be a 5-week course, and then you're out.
Yep.
And we recognised that very quickly, and we said, actually, that's not really valuing this person. That's not honouring who they are. If they need to do their learner's licence and it's going to take them a year, let's give them a year. So we don't put any restrictions around how often they can come in, or how long the course needs to go for. It goes for as long as they need it. That learning connection. And so, in saying that, I've been there now 4 years, and families that I first engaged with 4 years ago still come through the door. They might come through the door for something different, but they're still coming through the door. So it's a place to stand. It's a place to be accepted and to be who they are.
Some of the kōrero that you're having, it resonates so much with not only myself personally, but the mahi and the journey that we as an impact collective are also on. We stand by 3 principles, the first one being uniting together. What you're talking about around the organisational silos is very much at the front and centre of the thought patterns around breaking down those silos, and how can we network, collaborate and work together for the benefit of not only an individual, not only a whānau, but a community. The second portion, which you mentioned earlier, is a place to stand but a place to be heard. So the second portion of our Principalities is around listening first before moving into action. Some of the things that we've seen within communities and society in general is a quick jump to an action as opposed to taking that time to listen first. So by doing that, you're honouring the individuals.
So there's a couple of sayings that we have that roll off the tongue all the time when we're working at the Learning Centre, and one of them is he waka eke noa, so we're all in this together.
Yep.
And the other one that's probably a personal thing for me, because it's how I've done community work in the past, is that we listen to hear, not to respond.
Yeah.
And I think when you hold that value and that principle, you do truly hear. You're not putting your bias on it. You're not going, I know what Steve needs. He needs a red shirt today. You might hate red. But those are the principles that we hold, that allows us to truly hear what people are asking for, what they're saying, because they won't always say it directly. Sometimes you have to listen very carefully, and you have to check in constantly. Is this what I'm hearing? And those are the basic principles that we use to empower their voice. Fantastic.
Awesome. All of it. I mean, the kōrero, what you guys are doing, the importance of it, the placeholder nature of for our families, for our whānau, for our individuals that need that place to feel safe. It's incredible, mahi. Is there anything else that you think that we should be acknowledging, thinking about, especially in terms of that wider wellbeing and equity considerations for our communities?
It's a big topic.
It's huge.
It's a big topic, and I think there's always a lot of kōrero around it, which is really important, but equally important is that opportunity to listen before you act. I don't have any immediate answers for it, of course, but as long as we just keep valuing the people, value the people, value their voice, and keep working towards whatever it is that they need to get that next rung up.
Well, the value of that in itself is that we don't need to have those answers, because they do.
That's right.
And as long as we do take that opportunity to listen, to hear, that'll come forward.
Yeah, that's a theory we work on.
It's brilliant, and it works. It clearly works.
Yeah. The other interesting aspect for the Learning Centre is we're a neutral space, so we're not affiliated with any church group or with iwi or anybody. We're a neutral space. And when you look at the people that come through the door, and if you get into the stats of it, we have around about 70% are Māori that come through our door. Yeah. And I always find that an interesting thing to reflect on. And one of the things that we look at in that space is, if they're coming to an organisation like ours that is neutral, what is it that's stopping them going to some other organisations? What do we need to develop and grow to reconnect them perhaps back to their marae, if that's what's needed, or to their iwi or their whakapapa? So we look at that space all the time too. So you're having the, sitting down and forming a relationship, having a kōrero, and all the time thinking, what's missing in the puzzle? What is it that these people need to be truly whole and thriving? So that's just another aspect of it, and we work hard to connect them to other community groups or iwi where we can to try and form that whole being, whole sense of being and well-being.
So how do people engage with you guys? Do they need to be referred, or?
No. So we're not for profit, so we don't have a big budget to advertise. So the majority of the people that come through our door are word of mouth from friends and whānau. We do have referrals as well, but we don't do that in a traditional way. So we don't even have a referral form. So I always say that if somebody wants to refer, ring us up, have a conversation, or walk in the door with the person, and we'll drop what we're doing to see them.
Fantastic. So nobody gets turned away?
No. Definitely not.
Yeah, no,
Definitely not.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That takes me to the end of my questions. It's been, it's been insightful. It's been really cool to be able to reflect on the awesome mahi that you're doing, the places that you're filling, the stories that you're hearing, and unfortunately, and fortunately, you guys exist in terms of working with our communities.
It's definitely a catch-22.
Yeah.
Definitely. But we just feel very privileged to be working in the space and for people to trust that we'll respect their voice.
That's all that we can ask for, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lee, for coming in. I know that you love being in front of cameras. You love being in front of a microphone, so it's what you signed up for.
Maybe not. But thank you. I do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.